I was on it every single day. I'd finish work and get on it. So I'd gone and got it, and obviously I weren't driving, but on the way back I literally got straight in the car and packed up or whatever. And as I said, I got home and I'd emptied it all out and sort of said it, and I ended up doing it and going into my house, and I didn't know where my emotions were. Bottled up anger and frustration over such a long period. Also, while doing that, suppressing my memories, suppressing my feelings. So when I didn't have any, I'd sort of burst. And there was multiple occasions where it should have been enough for me to change what was going on. I'd become someone that I always promised myself I wouldn't be. Yeah, it doesn't really take your life away from you. It takes your life away, if you know what I'm trying to say. So, like, I always thought I could do it by myself, you know. I was like, if I ever wanted to quit, then I could just do it, but I couldn't. And I really struggled for a long time, in fact. I find a very, very important thing about finding who you are is loving and bettering yourself.
Before we get into the show, I just wanted to let you know I'm here to help you on your journey to getting your drink and drug use under control. So you can book an assessment that will allow you to have the space to assess your current situation with a trained professional and create a plan to get your life back on track. You can have a look and we can discuss our 12-week program that creates lasting change and allows you to create a life of more fulfillment and happiness. Or you can discover the empowering benefits of counselling. Just go to insideaddiction.co.uk/grow. Now, back to the show. Well, hey Sam, welcome to the Lisa Inside Addiction podcast, where we go inside addiction to raise your level of consciousness. It's nice to have you on the podcast today. If you don't mind just telling us a bit about who you are and a bit about your journey.
Well, thank you for having me, Luke. Well, my journey with addiction has been a bit, as most people's addictions, you know, it's a very up and down sort of life to live. I found my addiction started way before I come into contact with any sort of substance. Very compulsive behaviours in general. It was normally finding something, as most addicts as well, to sort of take your mind away from reality. And I'd watch films compulsively, like the same film 5 times in a row, and stuff like that as I was growing up. And then I reached the age of about 13. Funny enough, first thing most people was a cigarette. Smoked a cigarette and then ended up smoking weed not long after that. And from the moment I had that first joint, I knew that I was going to be an addict. You know, it was the sensation of not being in your own brain, and it went from there. It progressed. I spent a lot of my time finding the substance of choice. And I mean, you can be addicted to anything, but everyone has that one thing specifically that they're addicted to. I spent a long time trying to find that, so I experimented for a while. And once I eventually found that,
just in terms, like you said, before you kind of discovered kind of drugs or had your first cigarette or joint, you kind of knew you were an addict before that when you were growing up. What was life like growing up, and how did you kind of come to that realisation?
I can't ever say I had a bad childhood. I couldn't say it at all. I mean, in regards to school was a bit different. I mean, home life should have been great. It should have been great. I have loving parents that did absolutely everything for me. There was one thing that I didn't like was how often they were out at work, because they would work very, very long hours. And eventually we got like an au pair, a nanny. So home life was actually, it should have been really good, but due to my self-destruction at such a young age, it wasn't so great. School life was a bit rough. Never knew where I fitted in, ever. I couldn't find it. went through numerous friendship groups, just trying to be someone that mattered to someone else. And I figured this out later on in life. I was like, I spent all of that time trying to find someone to love me, but it was at home. And that was the place I was being the most self-destructive, because I was going out looking for it and then coming home and taking my anger out at home. But the love was always at home, you know, and that hit me a lot later in life. But I mean, in school I got bullied, you know. I think a lot of addicts generally did, you know. That's quite a bold statement. Like, you know what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of pressure or something that happens over a period of time that can happen to an addict. I mean, you can have a great life and still become an addict. But I think, I struggled quite a lot in school. I didn't get the help from teachers that I wanted or needed. I found out around the age of 7 or 8 that I had Aspergers. And due to me wanting to fit in somewhere so much, that hit me hard. Denial, being lost, not knowing how to control my emotions, that all just sort of piled up on top of me. And I turned into a bit of a... I didn't know where I was. I was very, I don't know if scatty is the right word, but I was here, there and everywhere. I was literally bouncing off the walls, but it could have either been in like a really, really good way or a really, really bad way. But my compulsive behaviours started happening from quite young during that time as well. So there was things that I was doing loads of. So whether it comes to gaming, I gamed for a while when I would sit on my computer or my Xbox for hours and hours and hours, and you know, you'd catch me falling asleep on my desk or like anything. I mean, I sort of now have taken my addiction to like music and skateboarding. I would be on my skateboard for hours and hours. So generally I have a very addictive personality, but due to what sort of happened with me growing up, I wasn't happy. And that led me on to becoming an addict.
Yeah, but like you say, your parents kind of, the love was at home, but you searched for it outside the home. But there was a sense of your parents weren't home that much, and then you had the au pair, and then later on you had, you know, your mental health diagnosis of Asperger's, and that made school hard because you got bullied and you wanted to fit in, and it was just generally hard. And that was kind of, you know, just growing up.
Yeah. That was a big part of growing up. I mean, I also did this thing where like I sort of adopt from girlfriend's girlfriend. As I said, I was trying to find someone to love me. So yeah, I dotted around from girlfriend's girlfriend, friendship groups. I was never really in one place, especially mentally. I mean, physically with friendship groups and stuff, I was never in one place. But mentally, I was never in one place. I mean, I could go from, as I said, being really, really angry. And as a child, I was a very angry person. And that was due to me being so sort of lost and confused. I didn't know where my emotions were at any point. My parents will even say, like, they didn't know where my emotions were at any point, because I was very... As I said, I was all over the place, and that's why when I came into addiction with substance abuse, it took that all away. So my preference tended to be downers, so like weed, or the one that I eventually found was ketamine, and that they mellow you out, you know. And because of my my constant change in mood, it sort of just leveled it out, which I didn't realise in the long run. If I didn't have any, the day after or the time after, you know, everything that I was holding in and suppressing with that addiction just came flying out, and that made me a very not a very nice person to be around.
I just wanted to take a quick break to let you know I'm here to help you on your journey through recovery. So if you need any extra help or support, you can just go to insideaddiction.co.uk/grow, and get in touch and book your free assessment where we can talk and discuss how we can move your life forward and take things to the next level. I hope to hear from you soon, and I wish you well on your journey through recovery. Now, back to the show. Yeah, like you say, it didn't make you a nice person to be around because everything was just kind of coming out and you didn't really make that connection between drugs and your emotions and what was going on.
No, not at all. I mean, especially with how much I struggled with my emotions anyway, the drugs just made it a lot worse. Yeah, I mean, I was experimenting with them. So I went from weed and I moved on to other hard drugs, and I went from, like, you know, the uppers like coke and mandy to whatever really. And that where I spent so long being in that suppressed state, you know, I never really knew who I was still. There was a part of that time where I was working on the person I wanted to be, even though I was still taking substances. But that gave me a bigger reason to stop. Over the years, I looked back at who I was starting to become at that point, and that made me realise that I'd completely turned into somebody else, and I didn't recognise him. Family didn't recognise him. Got to the point my friends were starting to not wanting to be around me, and it's that sort of thing makes you sort of see it, you know, see the bigger picture with it. I didn't even want to be around myself, so obviously no one else was going to want to be around me, and that called for change.
Yeah, and like you say, you started off smoking a fag and a joint, and then it kind of escalated to doing more, like you say, your drugs of choice were more like downer drugs. But you got to that point where your friends didn't want to be around you, your family didn't want to be around you, and you sort of recognised yourself sort of slipping away. What kind of led up to that experience?
So when I found my drug of preference, I mean, weed was my drug of preference. When I found ketamine, which was definitely my drug of preference, when I found that, I was partying a lot. I was working 5-6 days a week, sometimes with them, very rarely, but and I had a girlfriend, and I was obviously earning enough money to support that habit, and my relationship wasn't going very well, and the sort of the mix of, you know, you're like going to work, coming home to a bad relationship, and then me also seeing my previous self when I was starting to become a good person, or the person that I wanted to be. That all kind of hit me at once, but there was multiple things that happened during the time of me being with my ex-girlfriend, when we were quite toxic for each other, and being like, I was on it every single day. I'd finish work and get on it, and that's how it went. And I started to become a person I didn't want to be. There was multiple occasions where I'd become someone that I always promised myself I wouldn't be. I mean, don't get me wrong, as I said, when I was younger, I was a bit of a problem child. That was more due to me being lost, but this was bottled up anger and frustration over such a long period. Also, while doing that, suppressing my memories, suppressing my feelings. So when I didn't have any, I'd sort of burst. And there was multiple occasions where it should have been enough for me to change what was going on. And that it still didn't hit me. And one day I I'd picked up and I'd come home and I just sort of emptied it all out, and I wasn't doing small amounts of it as most addicts don't. And I sort of emptied it all out, and I just looked there for about half an hour, and I thought, you know, what am I actually doing? You know, it takes all your money, it takes the life away from you, you know, and it doesn't only take your life away from you, it takes your life away, if you know what I'm trying to say. So like, it's slowly killing you, but it's also removing your life from around you. And I saw it happen. I mean, at that point, I'd lost my job, I'd broken up with my ex, and I didn't have the money to fund it anymore, so I had to have the sober days, and I was in my own head again. And at first it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. But the more sober days I had, the more I realised I didn't do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you say the more sober days you had, the more you realised you didn't want to do it.
No, definitely. I mean, as I said, it is horrible being in your own head sometimes, but when you're in your own mind and you start to see that sort of hope, So in them sober days, as I said, I was seeing the previous self that was starting to build something for himself. And I was looking back at that sort of thing. And I was looking in the mirror and I was like, all the health problems that had come along with it, that's mentally and physically. And I'd watch myself turn into someone that I never wanted to be. And I thought at the time, while it was all going on, I was perfectly fine and living a normal life, and it was the furthest thing from normal.
Yeah. And like you said, just to rewind a bit, there should have been times when you should have stopped way before you did. What do you feel like it was that just kept making you just bang your head against the wall and just keep going round and round?
Okay, so there was one situation, I mean, I can briefly go into it, there's obviously details of it, I won't, but it wasn't even my drug of choice this time either. I'd taken a psychedelic and a pharmaceutical together, and I'd taken the psychedelic, and nothing happened to me. So I thought, okay, the pharmaceutical was all I had after that, so I thought, okay, I'll take it. And I took it, and wherever I took it, I woke up in the same spot that I'd taken it, thinking that I'd just gone to sleep. No, I'd woken up and, police were outside my house, my room was smashed up, my girlfriend was crying, my mum and dad were very angry, my car wasn't where it was parked before, and I was thinking, okay, so what have I done? And I didn't have a single clue, and to this day, I only know what I've been told has happened. I can't remember any of it. And my whole life come crashing down on top of me. And due to something that extreme sort of happening to me, I wanted to suppress that even more, even though I couldn't remember what happened. I could remember what happened afterwards. And seeing the aftermath of it was horrible enough, so I thought, I'm going to carry on suppressing this, and I don't want to have this feeling inside. And eventually, you learn that it's okay to not be okay. It's about what you do after having that feeling. I started sort of trying to transform those feelings into positive energy, doing something productive. So, you can have so much anger or guilt or rage inside you, but you can actually transform that energy, because normally that is something that you're very passionate about, on the good side or the bad side of the scale. When you feel an emotion, it's normally due to a lot of passion. And I started changing that, and I realised that these bad feelings can actually be turned into good, rather than suppressing them.
Yeah, so rather than suppressing them, they can sort of turn into good. And I'm just wondering how your kind of mental health and addiction sort of intersected, and how they were sort of related in your life.
So when it comes to mental health, I've never been diagnosed with something for mental health. I have a disability. I've never gone to the doctors about any depression or anxiety or anything, which I generally don't think I've had. But I've always sort of, as I said, my head always sort of hasn't been right. There's always been something, I don't think I've ever been majorly depressed, but there's been times that I've been extremely, extremely sad and in a very dark hole. And And well, with my addiction coming into that, I mean, ketamine can be a very dark and lonely drug, and I found comfort in it. And that's sort of where it interlinked, as in, if I was in a dark place, I could stay in a dark place and enjoy it. And that became very, very unhealthy and toxic, like extremely. Because, you know, it got to the point I was just doing it in bed and, you know, fall into a hole, and I'd absolutely love it, but I didn't want to be in my own head. That's why I was doing it. And yeah, it meant the mental health side of things is just, as I said, I'm a very, very upbeat sort of person. My head moves at 1,000 miles an hour, whether that be bad or good as well. But yeah, we always wanted something to slow that down. Always wanted something to slow that down. I soon realised after becoming sober that because of my head moving 1,000 miles an hour, I can achieve a lot of great things with that. I just have to learn how to control it.
Yeah. And yeah, like you were saying, when you were at that kind of point where you lost your job and your relationship and things were really hard, how did you get from there to kind of the point when you were sitting there, like you say, you put all the drugs out on, I'm assuming there's a table, on the table, and just looked at them for hours? What was that gap there like?
This was sort of the point where I'd already, like, obviously lost my job, lost my girlfriend, and this was a bit of time on from that. So I'd had all my sort of sober days and found a way to get it, and then had my sober days and whatever. And there was things I was doing that they weren't like unloyal or just nasty or whatever. It wasn't like that, but there was things that I was doing that was just not my normal self, you know. So because I could barely get it, when I could get it, I'd be on the case, you know, if I had to travel, whatever. There was one day, and I think this was actually that day, where one of my friends works a lot, and I very rarely get to see him. He's a brother to me, and I hadn't seen him for very long that day, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and I found out I could get some, and he didn't want to be around it. So, out of the blue, I was just like, right, I'm going to go get some, and just left it, sort of thing. And I was thinking, you know, I'd never do that normally. I'd want to spend as much time with this person because, you know, all the things he's done for me, not only that, he's like a brother to me. And the fact that I've just gone and left to go get some drugs, I was like, that's not the person that I ever wanted to be. Even though it's such a sort of small thing, and I don't think he thought a lot of it really, but it made me think a lot. So I'd gone and got it, and obviously I weren't driving, but on the way back I literally got straight in the car and backed up or whatever. And as I said, I got home and I'd emptied it all out and sort of said it, and I ended up doing it and going into my house, and obviously my parents could tell, and sort of just asked for help. Because at the end of the day, you know, no matter who you are, if you're in addiction, you need someone else's help. You know, and no matter how strong you think you are, you need someone else's help. I always thought I could do it by myself, you know, and I was like, if I ever wanted to quit, then I could just do it, but I couldn't. And I really struggled for a long time, in fact. But I was sort of lucky in the sense that I already had the mindset of wanting to stop. I mean, every addict wants to stop most of the time, but you know, it's a very contradictory situation. It's very, very contradictory because one minute you want to, and the next minute you don't, and you want to be happy in that moment, and then the next minute you want to stop again. But I'd already been thinking constantly that I wanted to stop, and it was at a point where if I was going to get it, I'd go get it, and then it was like I almost didn't remember going to get it. It was like my subconscious sort of did it. And that's something I learned. You have to be very aware of what you're doing at all times.
Yeah, like you say, it's almost that contradiction. I don't want to use drugs and I don't want to do drugs. I know there's a better future, but I'm still using drugs. And it's almost like becomes that unconscious pattern of, I've gone to get drugs and, sniffing the coke or done the ket or whatever it may be, smoke the joint. Before I even knew it, it's almost like it's so automatic ingrained and so hard to break that pattern.
Oh yeah, it's a subconscious routine. It's something you do without even realising most of the time. Even if you don't want to do it, even if you're telling yourself you don't want to do it, it generally does tend to just happen. And that's why, sort of making yourself another routine is I find it very key for me anyway. Because, as I said, drugs become a routine. So if you can turn that routine around, even to the smallest things, give yourself a waking up time, a food time like for your breakfast, etc. throughout the day, have a workout time, and then go for a walk this time. If you write it all down, that's another thing, writing stuff down. It becomes so much easier because then your mind is always active on something else other than drugs.
Yeah. And how did you kind of get from, like you said, that point when you were looking at the drugs and you realised you don't want to go on like this, to sort of being in recovery?
As I said, I asked my mum for help. I went to rehab. I was in there for 2 weeks. And that gave me time to relearn who I am. I find a very, very important thing about finding who you are is loving and bettering yourself. So knowing the person that you want to be and learning to love yourself, look in the mirror and actually feel the love for yourself. As sort of stupid as that may sound, that helped me a lot because, it doesn't matter what you look like, where you're from, no matter what. If you love yourself and you can better yourself, that I found that pushed me. So that's one thing that I made sure I did in rehab at the start of my recovery, is I made sure that I knew who I wanted to be and I knew that I could love myself. And that happened, and that made the rest of sort of the process a lot easier for me. And I know how hard it can be to, love yourself, but once you start to better yourself, that becomes easier as well. But through my recovery, it was more, as I said, finding myself and stuff, but also learning what my warning signs and stuff were. So when I become in a way that, they say you relapse before you relapse. So if I was to relapse, then there would be the warning signs of, say, I'd become very lazy. Even sometimes I'd be very, very over hyper, but I wouldn't show any emotion. And that sort of thing, and learning what the solution to that would be. So there was other stuff as well, like because of the lifestyle that I lived, it's going to be very hard to get away from drugs in general, and alcohol. I never really drank that much, but it's always going to be around me, and I had to write myself solutions to problems before they've happened and sort of drill that into my mind, and that helped me quite a lot as well.
Yeah.
But also things like writing a gratitude list. The way that I do mine is I write one thing every night and just keep on adding to the list. Before you know it, you have about a list this big of things you're grateful for, and that really lifts your spirit up actually, and that is also a part of bettering yourself. And yeah, like writing down your routines for the day. You can actually see even on my wall, I think that bit of paper there, that's me telling me what to do today.
Yeah.
And there's also stuff like even choosing your outfit the night before. So before you go to bed, choose the outfit for the next day. The small things like that, it fills in the gaps of time that you have of being in your own mind. And that's the one thing that I think we all struggle with.
Yeah, being in our own mind. Yeah, and like you say, so you have loads of things in place, and you went to rehab. What was it like, that kind of first day or the first sort of moment when you walked into rehab? What was going through your mind?
So going into rehab, I was prepared mentally. I didn't exactly know what I was walking into. You know, people have these thoughts of what rehab's going to be. But I was prepared for it, because I knew that if I wanted to achieve what I wanted to achieve, I had to follow these sort of steps. So I walked in there ready, and it was different to what I expected, as probably most people would say, but it was the best thing that I ever did. The first few days weren't so hard, actually. It was nice to meet everyone that was in there, etc. Sort of settle in. I think it was about the 4th or 5th day. I missed home. I missed my friends. I'm so used to being around my friends. Like, friends to me are family at the end of the day. Like, you know, you have your blood and then you choose your own family. They're some of the most important people to me, who I spend most of my time with. And that hit me more than anything. And that made that day a big struggle. I mean, I wasn't really thinking about taking drugs at any point. I mean, it obviously slips into my mind here and there, especially in rehab, it slipped in there more. But having a day like that, it was good, because it then showed me that I can deal with my own bad thoughts and emotions. And yeah, I mean, you've got to have that balance. So, I mean, to know that you can go through a bad situation, you have to go through something bad and know that you can deal with it sober. Because obviously all the bad situations I've been through before, I weren't sober. I didn't actually deal with them, I just suppressed them. So being able to know that, even though it wasn't a big situation, to know that I was going through something bad and that I could deal with my own emotions, that was a big step for me, because, as I said, being a child through teenager, especially like young teens, I really, really struggled to control any sort of emotion. And for the first time in pretty much my whole life, I was able to deal with my own emotions. Now that was a very big step, and that sort of showed me that I can do this.
Yeah, and like you say, that ability to be able to sit in the discomfort. And I know for me, I always thought, oh, when I feel emotions, or if I let my emotions exist, then I'm going to die. I just was like worst case scenario to feel my emotions. But like you're saying, to kind of have that ability in rehab to be in that environment and to be able to feel your emotions, have a bad day, not use drugs, and be like, wait, I made it. I can feel emotions. I can continue on. You know, I'm still here and things are still going okay.
Yeah. But there was a quote. It's like, "This shall pass," and it's such a simple quote, but you know, you sort of forget that time does continue moving on, and it was very, very nice to know that I could control my own emotions. After that, things carried on being really, really well. Actually, I sort of put everything I could into learning about myself. There was one thing actually that really, really helped me while I was in there. So where everything was so jumbled up through my life, I never really was able to put a timeline of what had happened in my life. I knew of the significant events that had happened. I knew how I'd felt throughout the years, and but I was never able to be like, okay, so this happened like this year, and this happened when I was this age, and like I was never ever able to piece it together, because so much was happening all the time. So, as I said, like when I was younger in school, school was a mess. My home life was very self-destructive, and it affected my parents a lot. But with all that happening at the same time, and you know, even outside of school, there was a lot going on, and then growing up, the madness continued. There was problems with people that stayed for a long time, and I didn't realise how much that sort of thing affected me. And where everything was going on, I was never able to quite grasp what had happened, and I managed to figure it out, but I wasn't able to write it down at all. I managed to write down a few bullet points, and then when I actually started speaking about it, I soon realised where things were being placed. So I'm obviously not going to go into it, but the way that it was placed actually helped me so much, because then I was able to realise, like, when I started feeling this way, why I started behaving like that, like the small subconscious things that trigger you that you don't quite realise. And that made me realise why I'd become the person that I had become. And that was like emptying a backpack full of rocks off my back. That was a big weight lifted. It also made me realise, like, some of the things that were still currently going on in my life that sort of come throughout the years of my life didn't need to continue the way that they were. Not just the substances, but definitely the substances. So that was a massive weight off my shoulders.
Yeah, and like you say, being able to do that kind of life story and put things chronologically in order, what happened, and having that kind of bird's eye view of your life, which we very rarely ever sort of take stock and do and think about, this is what's happened, this is how our life kind of panned out, allowed you to spot some of those blind spots and work out where some things started happening and where things kind of went wrong and how to change your perspective on those things.
Yeah, no, definitely. I learned a lot from that. And as I said, as I was trying to learn about myself anyway, that took it to another level. That made me realise a lot of the deeper things within me that I never knew. So that was a big push in the right direction. And then after that, it was just really working on what I was going to do once I'd got out of rehab. As I said before, because of my very sort of energetic behaviour, I found it very hard to stay in one place for so long. So being in rehab in that sense was quite hard, because you're in one building, etc. So with all of the knowledge that I'd already got, I decided to leave earlier than I was meant to be staying there. But I had set myself out a plan, but after I came out. And the plan went very, very well, very lucky for it to go so well. And I sort of transformed my addictive behaviour into other areas, such as music and skateboarding, and become my main focus. But what I've also realised is addiction, as I said, you can be addicted to anything, not just drugs, but you forget that you can be addicted to the smallest things, from your phone to anything. And I realised that I had taken my addictive behaviour out of rehab into the music and skateboarding, and at one point it started to become unhealthy. I wasn't taking breaks, I wasn't sleeping because I was too busy working on it, and I'd sort of transferred it from one to the other, and I realised that wasn't good for me either. So now I've got to sort of slow that down and obviously keep that good energy within it, but just not do it so much, because you do anything too much, it can affect you. You can become addicted to it. It affects your health both physically and mentally. And it was happening to me again, but just not with a substance. And don't get me wrong, what I'm doing, I love it. Yeah, and it's not harmful to me until I start doing it that much that it does affect my health. So that's also something I'm still learning, and there's always going to be new stuff to learn. So I've just got to make sure that I'm aware of what I'm doing. Yeah,
and I think, like I said, there's always going to be stuff to learn, and what you said there is the key, the awareness, and thinking about, your addict mind, and if it's saying, it's 11 o'clock, should I go to bed or should I stay up? And your addict mind's like, stay up, more. Then you're like, wait a minute, honestly, this isn't the right decision. I should probably go to bed, I should get rest. And like you were saying about discovering yourself and loving yourself, you know, what's the best version of yourself? What's that option? Is to love yourself and go to bed, and like you say, just let that kind of addict mind go, and focus on that balance and sort of bring it back into perspective.
100%. I mean, at the same time, I definitely need to be doing that, but there's times within it where I can use it to my advantage. I mean, that not 99.9% of addiction is bad. You can't deny that. But as I said, if you can transfer that addictive behaviour into something else which you can control, you know, so when you do something, you do it a lot, right? But as long as you can, in that time, do it a lot, but know when to take the breaks, it's at your advantage. And that's what I'm sort of learning right now. I mean, it won't be the same for everyone, obviously. As I said, I have a very addictive behaviour patterns anyway. So that's sort of in my nature before I was an addict. But it's something that I'm having to learn right now.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to someone out there who's kind of in a similar situation to where you were? They know their kind of life's not working, they keep running round on the merry-go-round of addiction, and they're thinking about going to rehab, but they've got doubts. What kind of advice would you give them?
You won't regret it. Walk through that door. But 100%. I mean, I know what that dark place is like, you know. I think every addict does. And I think the first step of coming off of anything that you're addicted to is always the hardest. You know, you sometimes get mental or physical withdrawal, sometimes both. And it is extremely hard to get through that. But once you take that first step, the rest of the steps are so much easier. I mean, there's obviously, you're never going to you're never going to be able to stop taking steps because the recovery is always going to be there. And that's another hard part, you know, becoming acceptant with the fact that you can't do it anymore. But once you take that first step, the light shines so bright, it's unbelievable. And that was for me anyway. I know it can be different for other people, but once I took that first step, you know, I was being more aware of my subconscious and being more aware of my surroundings and knowing that I can do it. And whether that be stopping drugs or achieving my dream, you know, that I can do it. I now have that self-belief because I'm not taking drugs anymore. So my advice to anyone who is in my position or was in my position, should I say, is just take that first step and put your all into it. Just put everything you have into it. And then from then on, just focus on your recovery. Do things that help you, you know, make you healthy. Do things that you enjoy because the little things in life matter the most.
Yeah. And like you say, just focus on that first step. And then when you build that bit of self-love, that bit of kind of care for yourself, you can keep building on that and building on that foundation. And you may have a really shit day and you can get through that shit day without drugs, and that builds more and more and more onto that in that foundation.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. As long as you keep building, what's to stop you?
I just want to take a quick break just to let you know I'm here to help you on your journey to getting your drink and drug use under control. So you can book a free assessment at insideaddiction.co.uk/grow. Now, back to the show.
You know, I mean, you're going to have bad days. You're going to have things come across. I mean, I've had this problem that I've had through my life that I've always felt I've had barriers being put in front of me, right? And they're always there. It can be the smallest thing, you know. And I think it's the same with a lot of people, you know. There's always some sort of barrier. But me being me, I was like, you know, God's picking on you. I don't believe in God, but you know what I mean. Like, someone's picking on you, like, put that barrier down there, he ain't getting through it. And obviously the bad days come with that. I had a bad day the other day where I feel like everything was going wrong. I've got a bad back, so I can't skate at the moment, and like I think I ordered the wrong thing, and like my laptop had viruses on it and all of this, and I was just thinking it's all hit me at once, and I'm just like, you know, this is another barrier that I have to overcome. And it wasn't like okay, now I'm going to go take drugs because I've had these barriers. It was more like, I'm going to get through these barriers and achieve what I want to achieve. And then I think as long as you have that belief and the action towards your beliefs, you will achieve anything that you want.
Yeah, awesome. And has there ever been any kind of books you've ever read throughout your life, or when you're in recovery or when you're in rehab, that have ever kind of had an impact on you, or anything you've sort of seen or watched at all?
I wouldn't say any books. There's 2 films. One's a documentary that I watched in rehab. The other one I watched before. Now, I saw a lot of similarities between the 2 of them. One is The Secret. It's about the law of attraction. And the other one is called Heal. And they're both on Netflix. And Heal is about basically the power of your mind in healing your physical. And the law of attraction is obviously about, you know, if you believe something enough and you think about something enough, it will come to you. That's sort of the basis of it. But they both interlink. If you watch it, you'll understand. They help me a lot in realising, you know, as long as you have that belief and you put the action towards it, it will happen. And being positive, I mean, and sort of, I think another important thing that I sort of realised with Heal as well, there was a part of it about a lady who, I think she had like loads of tumours or something, and she died, and she'd had a lot of problems with her dad growing up. She thought her dad didn't love her, and when she died, she saw her dad and felt nothing but pure bliss, and she'd come back to her body, and the tumours removed faster than a lot of doctors had seen ever before, or something like that. And I sort of took a context of that, and I thought, you know, if I dig out everything that I can from my past, no matter how much it's going to hurt, I can then sort of bury it and be at peace with it. Then I don't have any sort of underlying issues within my brain that are going to sort of drag me down without me knowing. I mean, there's obviously going to still be stuff that I'm going to be digging out throughout my life. But that was one thing that I realised, because you can destroy yourself mentally and it can affect you physically without you even knowing. So they were two good films or documentaries that I watched. And the other thing that I found extremely helpful is music.
Yeah.
Music, whatever kind of music people listen to, you know. If you're having a stressful time, just stick some music in. A lot of people meditate. That's not my preference. My preference is music. I'll just sit and put some music on and just sort of relax to it. And that's my meditation, because I can sit in my own brain and be comfortable with it. That's my preference, to just have music on with it. And that helps more than anything, the sort of meditation side of listening to music. As I said, I'm very energetic, so that calms me down.
Yeah, and I've watched both those documentaries. I think they're awesome. And yeah, the film The Secret, or the documentary The Secret, is based on the book, and another good author that's in the Hill is called Dr. Joe Dispenza, and both of them, like you say, they're similar, and they talk about similar things to what you've talked about, which is like the potential and the possibility of the future. I know that how I am today isn't how I need to be, and there's a future version of myself that's better than I am, you know, and how am I going to show up, and thinking about your thoughts and your behaviour and how you kind of get there. And also with music, like you say, about calming yourself in the here and now, calming what's going on for you and using it to manage your state. I mean, we've all probably got, you know, songs on our Spotify that will make us cry, and songs on our Spotify that will make us smile, because they are those emotional anchors for us. And it can be very, very powerful and good to listen to different music.
No, definitely. With The Secret as well, as if I've forgotten what I was going to say the way. Oh no, I'll go to the music quickly. Music is incredible in so many ways, and people don't really realise that. I think a lot of people, I know it's hard to sort of take music for granted, but I think people really do, and they don't appreciate it that much anymore, because just from sound, just from a vibration, you know, it can make you feel a certain way. And even if you put on a song that makes you cry, like, it's good to get that emotion out. If you're having a bad day and all you want to do is cry, stick on a song that makes you cry, because when you suppress feelings, it bottles it up, and it gets like a Mentos in a Coca-Cola bottle, and you shake it up, and you go. That's what happens when you suppress emotions, and that's why I found that also doing meetings every night. I do a meeting every night, and it helps so much just to be able to vent if I'm having a bad day, or just tell everyone I'm doing well. Not even speak if I don't want to, but most of the time I like to let that stuff out. It's good to speak to someone. I mean, even if you're not doing meetings, have people around you that you can talk to, because it is so good to be able to let any of that out. And I've remembered about the secret. When you release a sort of energy, whether it's good or bad, that same sort of energy comes back to you. I've always found a good example of this is, say, well, not exactly of that, but you know, like when you walk into a room and there's someone in there that's in a bad mood, and you walk in and you haven't even seen what's happened yet, and you can already feel that energy. There's something bad that's going on in that room, or something like that. You know, like energy is so real. Like you feel it of someone else. You know, so if you're constantly giving out that good energy, positive people are going to want to be around you. And I mean, positive people bring each other up. You know, and I find that that's what I've sort of had to do as well. Make sure I'm around positive people. People are going to bring me up, because you feed off each other's energy. As I said, you let it out, it comes back to you. And yeah, like being around people that are so sort of like-minded, of being positive and wanting to be bringing themselves up, helps so much. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. And like you said about, you know, your emotions, and they're like, you know, the Mentos in the Coke can, and they just sort of explode, and you use like music to help you, and meetings. Just for those who don't know what meetings are or understand the value of what happens at a meeting, what's a meeting, for the audience?
Okay, so the sort of meeting I do tends to be a little bit different, but Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous both run meetings where I'm pretty sure there's more than just them two as well, but it depends what the problem is. But I know they do meetings where you can share how you're feeling, or like sometimes there'll be like a main sharer, and they will share their story with the people that are in the meeting, and then after him or her done their share, people can share back and relate to what they've said. But the sort of meeting I do every night is a group of people in a very similar situation who like to share with each other. And it's sort of like a dialogue, really, of like how people are doing each day. It's normally the same people every day, and we all just do our share. We've started putting a bit of like reading a quote from one of the NA or NA books, or like choosing a subject of something to talk about, something. You just choose a word, and then everyone will have a share to do with what that word means, and how they can relate to that word. They are very, very helpful. Very, very helpful, no matter which one you choose.
Yeah, and like you say, the one where you have your kind of cool peer group around you, where you all do things together, you're all in a similar boat, you all talk about what's going on, like having that positive peer group is really, really good.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I mean, as I said, because of my lifestyle, a lot of people around me do take drugs and stuff, and it's important for me to have the sobriety around me. Very, very important, because if I was to sort of let go of sobriety, or the people around me that are in it, I'm just going to fall off, and I'm going to go back to what I was. I have to keep that sobriety around me, otherwise, as I said, I will fall off, and that's the last thing I will. So it's very important that no matter what lifestyle you live, to make sure that you stay around people that are sober.
Yeah. And we are kind of coming towards the end now, but is there anything kind of on your mind, or anything else you feel like you wanted to share?
I think that's all me, thank you, Luke.
Yeah, no worries. Well, yeah, Sam, it's been awesome to have you on the show. Thanks very much for coming, and we'd love to have you back again soon.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm more than happy to come back soon.
Okay, awesome. I wish you well on your journey to recovery, or through recovery. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, Luke.